In Teotihuacan, do you have a sense for who was it that started building the pyramids? Was it something that came along when the city was already pretty metropolitan and had a lot of different cultures that came together, or was there one culture that established the city and then was the mover and the shaker in terms of building?
Yeah, so that's a great question and still not resolved. So what was the dominant ethnicity or ethnic identity of central Mexico? Because the other populations I've been talking about are migrant populations. So Zapotecs came from Oaxaca. There are, the Maya came from the Yucatan and Central America. Gulf Coast populations might have been Totonac speakers. People from Michoacan would have spoken a West Mexican language. But what was the baseline Central Mexican dominant ethnicity? It probably was not just a single one. At the time of the Spanish invasion, the two dominant ethno-linguistic groups were Nahuatl, or the Aztecs, who their descendants refer to themselves as Nahuas, and the language that they speak is Nahuatl. And then there's also the Otomis, or the Hnyu, which the Otomi is like the Aztec term for them. It's a different language group. It's tonal. I can't speak it at all. I mean, I have isolated Nahuatl vocabulary, but it was a really important second, and still is today, ethno-linguistic group in central Mexico. It is in the same language family as Zapotec and Mixtec in Oaxaca. So there's that language family is sort of tethered to the central and southern highlands of Mexico. There still are, actually, I work with a family at Teotihuacan who are Otomi and speak Otomi. So there still are people in the valley who speak that particular language. Now, why is there debate? Because the arrival of, so the Aztecs say that they migrated from somewhere else to the northwest. Historical linguists who've worked on the issue have proposed for a long time that it is sort of a more recent incursion. So Nahuatl is in the Uto-Aztecan family, which is the largest language family in the Americas. It spans from around where you are in southern southern Utah into northern California, down through the Puebloan languages of the Southwest, and all the way through central Mexico, with Nahuatl being the dominant language, but then even isolated populations getting all the way to El Salvador and Nicaragua. Where that originated and how it expanded is still somewhat contested. But the two dominant hypotheses are that the main ethno-linguistic group at Teotihuacan was either a proto-Nahuatl group, like a precursor directly to the Aztec language, or a proto-Otomi speaking group.
But in terms, yeah, I mean, it seems like a difficult thing to pin down. But it's like, in terms of building the pyramids, like, what is when you excavate, do you find a continuity of the structure, or is there something that was built that was smaller that something is then built on top? Like, what does it actually look like in terms of the construction?
Oh, yeah, that's fascinating. And they all differ. All three are different. So the three biggies at Teotihuacan are the Sun, Moon, and Feathered Serpent pyramids. The Moon pyramid that's where I started in Teotihuacan, and that project was directed by Seguro Sugiyama and Ruben Cabrera, a Japanese researcher and a Mexican researcher, and it involved tunneling. So the pyramid had been reconstructed in the 60s. I might have mentioned this last time, but it was in anticipation for the Olympics, and the Olympic torch was taken up on the top of the Moon pyramid. But it just sort of was slapped together for tourists. Like, this looks like a coherent monument. But it wasn't really scientifically excavated. That started in the late 90s and through the 2000s with tunneling underneath it, so you wouldn't damage the facade of the later structures. And that documented 7 different construction phases. And the first 3 were quite modest, I think 20, 30 meters on a side, little temples, similar to the small town that I excavated at La Laguna that was centuries before. And then it got monumental and measured 105 Teotihuacan metric units later, sometime sort of in the probably in the 200s. The Sun Pyramid is the biggest. And what's fascinating is when the Sugiyamas excavated there more recently, they found that it really was built in one construction episode. There were earlier structures there, but they don't look like temples. There's like random walls and maybe some enclosure was there, but there wasn't like a big bulk. And so it wasn't an accumulated construction process. The Feathered Serpent Pyramid, also the one we see today, the tourists look at, it was the smallest of the three, but it's heavily sculpted and it's made in the nicest dressed stone that you find at Teotihuacan. So a lot of attention went into that, working the stone and making the sculptures of the Feathered Serpent. That was all built in a one-shot deal also. But Sergio Gomez, who recently excavated the tunnel that runs underneath the temple, found sculptures relating to the same theme. So there's like rattlesnakes' tails and bird headdresses. So there is some mix of like bird, avian, serpent type imagery. So there could have been something earlier there that then was dismantled and they built the new one on top.
Yeah, what's up with those tunnels, by the way? Was that done at the same time as the temple itself, or is that from something earlier? Or have they been finished with that? What's the story with those? I understand they've been kind of sealed up and nobody's working on them right now, or?
Well, I was just in the one under the Feathered Serpent Pyramid in August. It is largely totally excavated. There were last sort of few offerings that the team was excavating. But that was early. Yeah, that was built like in the 1st century and into the 2nd century, and then it was totally sealed over. So it has some of the earliest materials from Teotihuacan. It is under what it used to be under the water table, so it has wet preservation of organic materials. So it's fantastic. Like there are all these seeds and wood and animal remains that can be very securely dated. There's evidence of interaction with as far away as the Maya. So like there's these big trumpet strombus shells that would be used as trumpets that are etched in sort of Maya style etchings. There's materials from Oaxaca and other distant regions. So already in the 1st century Common Era, Teotihuacan was sort of international, or already had these long distance interaction networks.
But from what I heard, the discovery of the tunnel was like there was some storm that happened and the ceiling collapsed and then the tunnel was discovered. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there was a lot of heavy rains, and that led to sort of creation of a sinkhole that then they started digging out, and that was this shaft that goes down 15 meters into the volcanic tuff substrate of central Mexico, which is called Tepetate. It's very hard stuff, and remember, they didn't have metal tools, so they had to use these sort of fire-hardened sticks to chunk it out, and they did that for over 100 meters distant to go under where the eventual pyramid would be.
Do you think that there are other tunnels that haven't been found yet?
So there is one under the Sun Pyramid, but that one was looted. So the one under the Feathered Serpent Pyramid, and looted in antiquity. The one under the Feathered Serpent Pyramid was kept sealed. So sort of like the difference, we're at the 100th anniversary of the discovery of King Tut's tomb. And, King Tut was this minor pharaoh for Egypt, but his tomb wasn't broken into. And so you saw all these amazing things. For Teotihuacan, that's like the tunnel under the Feathered Serpent Pyramid that remained intact, while who knows what was in the Sun Pyramid one, probably also really spectacular stuff, but that had been cleaned out in antiquity. Now, another colleague, Veronica Ortega, she, using geophysical perspection techniques in front of the moon pyramid, has detected something that she suggests could be another tunnel going under the moon pyramid. And so then if that's the case, then that could be another unexplored one.